Our next speaker is going to introduce this year's keynote speaker, Senator Glenn Hager. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the chairman of the Lower Colorado River Authority, this year's underwriting sponsor, Tim Timmerman.
Good morning. Thank you, Todd. Morning, everyone. The Colorado River Land Trust is excited and honored to be this year's conference underwriter. First of all, I would like to recognize some of our board members of our newly formed land trust. Ray Wilkerson, Ray is right here in the back, and Mr. Tom Martine right here. Kind of interesting, we got three land developers on our land trust, and even we see the need for open space and land conservation, and we're committed to it. So thank you all for agreeing to serve on our board. The mission of the Colorado Land Trust is to preserve the Colorado River watershed by protecting open space through conservation, easements, and education. The Colorado River watershed is approximately 400,000 square miles and has a long history of being the lifeblood that runs through the heart of Texas. Although we are just getting started, the Colorado Land Trust Board of Directors is taking a long-term view, knowing that starting now, we have the opportunity to preserve one of the most diverse and vital river systems in all of Texas. We can help do that by taking the pressure off of land development, off farmers and ranchers, in a way that respects the property rights of landowners. Colorado River Trust looks forward to joining you and other land trusts across the state in preserving the best of Texas for generations to come. Now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Senator Glenn Hager. Senator Hager is a sixth-generation Texan who farms on land that has been his family since the mid-1800s. Glenn and his wife have 3 children, and they live in Katy. Senator Hager serves as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Nominations, vice chairman of the Committee on Government Organization. He also serves as a member of several other committees, including Natural Resources, Criminal Justice, Agriculture, Rural Affairs, and Homeland Security. With all that, I'm sure he's going to have a very busy session, let me tell you. So, in addition to his other appointments, Senator Hager is a member of the Environmental Flows Advisory Group, Edwards Aquifer Oversight Committee, Legislative Rural Caucus, as well as a past chairman and current member of the Texas Legislative Sportsman Caucus. And did I mention that he's a Fighting Texas Aggie? Please join me in welcoming Senator Glenn Hager.
Thank you, Tim, and Todd, I'd say thank you for saying some words about Scott Campbell. Scott and I, we good friends, entered the Texas House of Representatives together back 10 years ago in '03 and got to know each other very well over the years, so I appreciate you recognizing that this morning. It's good to be with you. It's good to see you, especially after I've already been to the Capitol for a little bit working this morning. I thought, wow, can I just get out for a little while? So at least I got to drive over here and see there is an outdoors, even though it's just watching the traffic as I'm driving over here. But it's good to see you. As Tim mentioned, some of you see a lot of familiar faces in the room, but a lot of you probably have never had the chance to meet. That I've been in the state legislature for 10 years now and just represent just a little bitty piece of Texas. Somebody last night was asking me, said, well, where exactly is your district? I said, it's kind of simple. 21 counties. It ends up being west of Houston, south of Austin, east of Corpus, and east of San Antonio. That's me. The size of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, a little bit more of another northeastern state. 811,000 people. That's bigger, more populated than the whole state of Alaska or Idaho or North Dakota, and I could name off a whole bunch more. You know, it's amazing how large our Senate districts are these days, both in geographical size, diversity, and the areas that we represent. And the Senate district is, of course, we all, as Texans, it was amazing when I lived overseas for a few years in between A&M and law school. People would ask you where you're from. Of course, they could tell I have just a little bit of a Texas accent. And so, you know, we always say we're from Texas. And we might be proud to be Americans, but we always say we're from Texas. So we're very proud of our heritage here. And one thing that I'm proud of, that my family has been here for quite a while, and I still farm with my dad and my cousin. And so that gives me a sense of tremendous connection to the Texas outdoors, to the property, to nature, to the things around that we have. You know, in the Senate District, I have 5 major rivers that run through that district, whether it's the Brazos, the Colorado, the La Vaca Navidad, the San Antonio, or the Guadalupe. And then when you end up representing 1/3 of the entire coast of Texas, it gives you a different perspective. And I was, as I was looking around the room, and one thing that was mentioned was endangered species. And you know, I was very proud that when I got into the state Senate just 6 years ago, I had some big shoes to fill in my predecessor of Senator Armbruster as the chair of Natural Resources. And one of the things that I had to work on immediately was dealing with the endangered species that we have because of the springs in San Marcos and New Braunfels. And I was very proud that earlier this year, the stakeholders in that process, who come from a wide range of different interests, that have not been able to agree on much of anything for years. And of course, we as a legislature just put a framework, just some timelines. We need to get X done by this day, this day, this day, and then it's the stakeholders. It's your process. Now, of course, I've been on the phone with several of them over the time. Stay on the wagon, don't fall off the cart. But I mean, it's pretty impressive when actually we get through an entire RIP with a take process and get a habitat conservation permit process. That's amazing. That really is an accomplishment, because nowhere else in the entire United States have we had such a stakeholder-driven process. And that's amazing. And I tell you, it is amazing to me as someone who lives in Katy, which is the edge of Houston's growth. And it is still overwhelming numbers to realize that in Texas, we have roughly 1,000 to 1,300 people move to this state every single day. You know, and I tell people that when you drive through a community, a small community, which I have a whole lot of them in my district, but take Katy, the town I live in, which the town itself is 14,000 people. Now, the greater area outside the city limits is much bigger, but I live in the city limits, and that means that entire town was built in 10 to 14 days. Drive through a small community in Texas, one of 1,000 people, 500 people, 2,100 people, and think about that whole community being built. I have entire counties. One of my home county of all my life, Waller County, was here yesterday for Waller County Day, and I mentioned that number, and I said, Judge, that meant the whole county's got populated in 30 days. So the pressures that we have, and the pressures that we have to continue to have properties, one, for wildlife habitat, number 2, as we talk about whether it is water, as with the LCRA, you know, the reasons that it was in part created is because of flood control, issues of downstream, which is the folks that I represent, whether it's purifying water, which is the lifeblood of the bays and estuaries. You have to have a continual inflow of fresh water as well as the salt water. Whether it's one of the counties that I represent, Aransas County, we have to have a constant inflow of that back and forth to have a healthy bay system. And it's impressive to me that over the course of the last several years, here in Texas, you have land trusts that, in my opinion, have made significant strides, because it's another tool in the toolbox to be able to meet some of the challenges that Texas has with that rapid growth. Several of my counties, and I don't necessarily disagree with this, and they said, you know, I think they just soon put a fence up. They let you in on the weekends. You can stay at the hotels, you can spend your dollars, and then come Sunday evening or Monday, you can leave. And I have a whole lot of counties that are like that, that we enjoy Texas for what we've got to know it as. But the question is how do you balance that? How do you balance the fact that, take for example, I think one of the panels you have coming up is talking about the oil and gas. Well, 2 of the counties that have the highest increase in oil and gas production in the state of Texas, DeWitt and Gonzales counties, Cuero, the town, Gonzales, the town, that's in my district. How do you balance those? How do you make sure that you continue to provide for the environment? How do you continue to provide for properties, continuing to keep agriculture lands, continuing to keep that outdoor spirit, that as we look to our younger generations, they can continue to enjoy some of the things that we have. And so some of the significance of talking about yesterday being at the Capitol, I would challenge you that it is extremely important to reach out to your legislators and tell them what you are doing. Because if you do not reach out to them, as I mentioned, I have over 800,000 constituents, 21 counties, and a size of a district that is bigger than so many of the North England states put together. And so the point in saying that is if you do not communicate with me, I'm not going to know what's going on. So it is vital for you to communicate and educate people as to what does a land trust mean. What does it mean that in Texas we lose roughly 150,000 acres to development a year? And how do we provide some of those areas to continue to have an outdoors? And I firmly believe that you can intermix the two, and land trusts provide a different opportunity. And I think that there is a greater sense of awareness in the legislature than there has been in the last several years. And one of the things that I said I apologized of trying to rush back off, because Senate Finance, we're having votes taken in just a few minutes to put some of our pieces of the budget together. And some of those pieces are one area of the budget that I've been working on that's a passion of mine is dealing with all the state agencies that deal with the natural resources. And we worked very hard to put dollars back into Texas Parks and Wildlife, to put dollars back into areas that if we don't, we're not going to have those for future generations. And so myself and a few other members of the Senate have just kind of drawn a line and said, no, we can't go backwards anymore. We have to go forwards. And so I kind of want to leave to go back to make sure that we're able to preserve the strides that we've made forwards in the last several weeks. And I do think it's important that as you say, you end this convention and you leave, and Capitol Day was yesterday, but did you know we're still in session for several more months? So I challenge you as a group, you may have had a group Capitol Day yesterday, but you can continue to have an individual Capitol Day for every day that we're yet in session. And I will tell you the most important thing that you can do is not look at it as though we're here only 140 days every 2 years, because my job doesn't stop when we sine die the last day of session. I still have to be engaged with the state agencies, the issues that I'm dealing with, and the things that are important to the people. And so my point being in that is it's most important for you to be able, you need to try to come talk to us, or we need to be out in our districts, and you need to take that opportunity during the interim. That's the most important time you can catch us. It's hard to catch me during session, but you can catch me when we're not in session. And so I thank you for what you're doing. I think that everybody is moving in a significant direction, but we have a lot of work to do, because when you think that Texas is growing 5 million people in the last 10 years, and we're projected now, we have 26 million and upwards to 40 and 50 million people, 45 million in the state of Texas. Wow, that's a lot more land. And so the question is where are we going to go as a state in the next 10 to 15 years is very critical. And I think you have a large part in playing in that. So I thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing. And I'm sorry that I am going to run away so I can go work on some of those natural resource issues. Thank you for letting me be here today.